When it comes to learning how to do anything in life, we tend to have two options. You either study what other people have come up with, which is what most of us do, or you come up with a method on your own. At some point, everything we could learn or do was new. Someone had to be the originator, so maybe it's not so weird to think that even a few celebrities have devised their own techniques and ways of doing things. Number 10. Chuck Norris has his own fighting style. If you're a fan of martial arts, you have a wide array of styles and methods to get into. Thanks to 80s movies, we all know karate, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's taekwondo, judo, krav maga, muay thai, aikido, kung fu, and dozens more. Aikido dates back to the 1920s, while Shaolin monks began developing their kung fu fighting style over 1,000 years ago. So the tradition is old, but it's constantly evolving. So much so that even world-renowned actor and early internet meme Chuck Norris developed his own martial arts style as well. Norris developed a variation on taekwondo that he calls Chung Kuk Do, or the Chuck Norris system. It merges traditional taekwondo with a handful of other styles, including Tang Soo Do, jiu-jitsu, and karate. The formal organization that teaches the art, the United Fighting Arts Federation, was founded in 1990, though Norris had been developing not just the fighting style, but a philosophy to go along with it for many years beforehand. Like other styles, there is a ranking system based around colored belts. The highest rank is black belt, itself broken down into 10 degrees. Only 4 people have a 10th degree black belt, including Chuck Norris himself. There are about 100 schools teaching the method around the world. Norris is not the only actor to have created his own fighting style, of course. Bruce Lee famously created Jeet Kune Do, while Jackie Chan developed what is known as a drunken fighting style for his Drunken Master films. Even Keanu Reeves has been credited with developing a new style of gun fu, a method derived from Hong Kong action movies that blends traditional fighting styles with gunplay for his John Wick films. Number 9. Nick Cage invented an acting style. Few actors can match Nick Cage for energy on screen in a movie, and off screen, few have managed to match his almost mythical presence. He's gone from Oscar winner to meme to cult hero, whose legacy is a frenetic mix of engaging, baffling, and unforgettable films. Even if you don't like him, you have to admit there are few people like him in Hollywood. Part of what makes Cage so enigmatic is how he approaches his craft. After all, how many actors can lay claim to their own acting style? Cage describes his own acting as something called nouveau shamanic. Just don't ask him what that means. Cage says he once read a book called The Way of the Actor, which helped him realize that early medicine men and shamans were actors of a sort. He also described it as a way to augment imagination in order to produce a performance that doesn't feel like it's fake. In other words, he approaches acting as though he's trying to will the lie of his performance into the truth, to make you believe it, almost by making himself believe it. Number 8. Hank Williams III invented a new musical subgenre. Inventing new musical genres isn't the easiest thing in the world these days. Most music is going to end up falling into a subgenre, but that can still be something unique. Take, for example, Cattlecore, the musical subgenre attributed to Hank Williams III, grandson of the legendary Hank Williams. According to Williams, Cattlecore is what you get when you mix 3 exceptionally unlikely styles in one place. Country music is where it starts, which seems to make sense for someone named Hank Williams, but then it combines heavy metal. That's an unusual but not an unheard of combination, to be sure, but the icing on the cake is cattle auctioneering. Put the 3 together and you get Hank Williams III's 3-bar ranch and songs that are definitely an acquired taste. Number 7. Jimi Hendrix invented his own timing. Speaking of musicians, Jimi Hendrix is continually proving himself to be a musical innovator long after his death. In this case, it comes to the way he used timing. Most of us who have even a basic understanding of music understand timing as keeping the beat. It allows for synchronization in the way the music plays out. A metronome is one of the easiest ways to understand timing, and many people learn to play piano and guitar using the device to manage their timing. All that flies out of the window or when you listen to Jimi Hendrix. While not every song will strictly follow a perfectly regulated beat, Hendrix managed to make an incredibly relaxed playing style that can jump up and down in terms of timing, speed, and rhythm. From a precision standpoint, a music teacher would fault Hendrix's playing as being poor and straying too far from what should be established timing. But does anyone ever say that about Hendrix? The man's considered one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Instead, what Hendrix does is make his rhythm more organic. Basically, the imperfection can actually make it sound better to our ears because it's not so rigid. Number 3. Terrence invented suspect math. Way back when the MCU first started up, Terrence Howard was in Iron Man as Tony Stark's good friend and future war machine, James Rhodes. After that first movie, Howard was replaced with Don Cheadle. But what happened to Howard? He said Robert Downey Jr. pushed him out by taking a pay raise at the cost of Howard's own payday. Rumors at the time said Howard expected the same pay as Downey Jr., so, well, who knows for sure. Especially when we also know that Terrence Howard invented his own maths, it's a little bit suspect. As he stated in an interview, Howard does not believe 1 × 1 = 1. He thinks that's impossible and it must equal 2. The reason for this is, quote, 1 × 1 = 2 because the square root of 4 is 2. So what's the square root of 2? Should be 1, but we're told it's 2, and that cannot be. Now the square root of 2 isn't 2, but that's neither here nor there. It sounds like he's joking, but the man is very serious, and he does not believe 1 × 1 = 1, thanks to a clear and fundamental misunderstanding of what the times part of the equation means. It must equal 2. He developed his own language of symbols, naturally called teriology, to go along with this, and he truly believes we will soon stop teaching children this 1 × 1 thing, because he thinks it's nonsense. Number 5. Stanley Unwin invented his own language. Modern audiences may not be that familiar with Stanley Unwin, but the British comedian was beloved for many years prior to his death in 2002. One of the things that made him such a standout was the almost baffling ease with which he could speak quickly in total gibberish. Unwin developed what was essentially a language known as Unwinese. It had a perfect flow and cadence, and to someone not paying any attention to it, it probably just sounded like everyday conversation. But listen closely, and you'd hear the man was mixing up nonsense with out-of-place words, but with a delivery that sold it as genuine, meaningful speech. You can still find many videos in which he gives or even conducts interviews in character that are oddly easy to follow, even when half the words have no meaning. Number 4. Diamond Dallas Page invented his own yoga. The post-wrestling careers of many professional wrestlers can be as surprising as their on-screen characters. Stars like Dwayne Johnson, John Cena, and Dave Bautista have gone on to Hollywood stardom, while others like Jesse Ventura and Glenn Ken Jacobs went into politics. And Diamond Dallas Page? He invented his own style of yoga. Also known as DDP, it's fitting that Page's yoga is called DDP Yoga. Endorsed by the likes of musician and horror director Rob Zombie, DDP Yoga is a form of intense yoga that focuses on building strength and burning calories while improving flexibility. So it's yoga. It's just intense. There are traditional yoga poses, along with sports rehab therapy and calisthenics, designed to give you a workout that is not hard on the joints. The program has over 300 workouts and many positive reviews. Number 3. Zareefa Jan, an illiterate poet, invented her own alphabet to write poetry. When it comes to inspirational stories, you won't find many better than Zareefa Jan's. Now in her late 60s, Jan lives in India and she never learned to read or write. That didn't stop her from having the heart of a poet, however. So what does a poet with no ability to write poems do? Well, she wrote them anyway. Unable to write in her native tongue or any other, Jan created a language on her own that allows her to put her thoughts on paper. Jan said she had discovered her need to create poetry shortly after getting married when she went to fetch some water and was simply overcome and found herself in a trance-like state. She came to and had a poem that she needed to share. What she created was a language of circles. Though her children had learned to read and write, they spoke English and Urdu, while her poems came to her in Kashmiri, a little-spoken language no one else in the family knew. So she took to making her own symbols to archive her thoughts, and though they may look like nothing but repeated circles to others, Jan claims to be able to read them, essentially having created her own alphabet. People have accused her of lying and that the circles can't possibly have meaning. She simply remembers the poems and recites them that way. That said, her family and others in the community believe she has done as she claims, with another poet pointing out that he had never heard of another poet being able to remember and recite their entire collection before. Number 2. The Queen accidentally invented a new dog breed. These days, the royal family doesn't get in the news for many positive things. Maybe the Queen just needs to get back to basics, like celebrating jubilees or accidentally inventing new dog breeds. Those are the kinds of stories that people love. The Queen is famous for a small army of corgi dogs, and if the internet is any indication, people love corgis. But it is a lesser-known fact that not all of the Queen's corgis are actually corgis. Some of the dogs the Queen has had over the years were a breed that she's responsible for introducing to the world, the slightly less majestic Dorgie. Once upon a time, Princess Margaret had her own dog named Pipkin. Pipkin was a Dachshund, better known as a wiener dog, though the Queen probably never used that term. One day Pipkin met one of the Queen's corgis, and nature being nature, the two produced a litter of pudgy little beasts that everyone agreed were delightful, so they kept breeding them. It's not an officially recognized breed according to the American Kennel Club because they only recognize purebreds, but they have become popular over the years. Number 1. Tony Iommi is widely credited with inventing heavy metal music. We said earlier that it's hard to create a new genre of music, and that's true, but that's today, and every genre has to start somewhere. Heavy metal, for instance, started with legendary guitarist Tony Iommi after he lost his fingertips. Iommi was working at a factory in 1965 when a machine crushed his fingers and took the tip of 2 of them. He was just getting into music in a serious way and was worried the accident would ruin his future. So, with homemade fingertips, he began tweaking his approach to guitar playing to see what he could do. He used lighter strings and relied more heavily on power chords while dropping his tuning. The result was what he called aggressive, raw, and fat. He'd go on to bring that sound to the band Black Sabbath and give rise to the entire genre of heavy metal.